it's more than easy to give someone a product to sell, but if they have no idea how to sell it, then you're pretty screwed.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the High Level Spotlight Sessions, where we showcase awesome marketers doing awesome marketing. Today, we're actually going to talk sales, though. I've got Chris Morrison with me. He is the creator of Predictable Sales, a coaching company that currently works with over 70 agencies around the world. Chris, thanks so much for coming on.
Hank, thank you so much for having me here. It's 5:04 a.m. here in Sydney, Australia, so nice and early for me.
Oh, well, we appreciate the early rise.
Thank you for getting me out of bed so early. I can get a lot into it.
So, Chris, how did you become a sales expert? Take me back. Did you work at an agency? Did you have a sales job?
Yeah, good question. So we kind of fell into the agency space. I used to run sales teams with about 100 people in the sports nutrition space. And we grew companies from like 20 to $100 million, which was super cool. And one of the biggest things that we actually like sort of leaned into for us to actually get better sales was helping each company that we work with actually like systemize their marketing plan to actually sell the products that we actually are selling to them in the first place, right? Like it's more than easy to give someone a product to sell, but if they have no idea how to sell it, then you're pretty screwed. And so we did that for a long time. This is like talk 6, 7, 8 years ago, but I've been in this sales thing for about 15 years now. I hit a bit of a glass ceiling there and ended up taking like a director role in Australia here for another sports nutrition company. And the actual like owner of the company was siphoning money out of the company. So like we were crushing it. We grew a company from 3 to 21 million in 18 months by going through like a multitude of other distribution channels and joint venture partners, which is super cool. The thing that helped us sell through so much was the fact that we actually helped people with their marketing more than their actual like product development and what they were buying from us in the first place too. And 4 or 5 of the companies, like the major key accounts that we were working with, reached back out and pretty much asked, like, dude, I know, like, I don't know, I heard what happened with the company you're working with. I don't know if you're open to it. We didn't actually like the products you sold us that much. We just liked how you helped us package them to sell them, if that makes sense. To actually, like, what that did for us was actually give us the permission and opportunity to actually like market better, which is cool. Would you ever consider consulting to us? And I said, no, I just want to get another job. Like that's ridiculous. Why do I want to do that? Are you sure? Yeah, but it sounds like a ridiculous idea. Like, because my brain was just starting to job at that time. We'll pay you $5,000. I'm like, I will now consult. That sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. And like, I think I sort of like had my my whistle wet for the opportunity to what consulting could do for the other people that I was actually like consulting to firstly, right? Because if someone was willing to say, hey, like we're willing to pay you like bulk cash to like consult to us, like there was obviously some great value that they were getting out of it too. And once I took those contracts up, it was great because it was a what's the best way to explain it? A paid internship for all the screw ups I made, right?
Okay,
Because
gotcha.
for the pure reason that being a salesperson turning into an actual like consultant for a company, two totally different sort of like ball games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so fast forward, like so that's where like the consulting and coaching thing sort of came in the first place, and that was about probably about 6 or 7 years ago actually, which was great. It was like a great step in the door for it. We ran a couple of coaching, like I started a company in the fitness space because that's where I came, called Fit Pro Sales Coach, which was designed to actually help like sports nutrition companies, sports nutrition stores, and like gyms and all type of stuff actually develop like good pipelines and sell more product at the same time too. Really bad business partnership, got that to like a couple $1 million a year, and then it like disintegrated away because of bad business partnership, which is another great lesson at the same time too. And about 2 years ago, decided to relaunch back into a sales training program. And we had like a case study group that we started out with, like most coaching programs probably do out there. They start with a case study group of people, and actually even with agencies, you start with your people that are on trials to get the results, to see who gets the like what case studies you can market to get more people in, and help more people, right? And we did a case study group, and the whole purpose of it was to actually help sales teams, B2B sales teams. Like we hadn't like learned, or it wasn't learning, but the intention was, let's open this up to a bit of a wider market and do like a B2B sales team offer, with the intention of identifying who gets the best results out of it. And then we can entertain who we can sort of like niche into a little bit further, right? Because we have better case studies in that world. And it makes sense to, like, if we don't hate working with them, let's do it. And we never marketed towards it. We had like 6 or 7 marketing agencies that actually like joined us within that. And they like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, got the best results out of everyone in that, right? And I think that for us, you know, the time that's gone on since, and speaking to those people, who a couple of us like are still clients, which is fantastic, and it's like it's a really nice feeling, was that the level of intellect that we put into the program actually helps a marketing company probably more than most, because they can actually use what we teach them to actually help with their client campaigns at the same time too, is what I found.
Double whammy.
Yeah. So like the actual, call it the ripple effect of our teachings, and the way that we actually help construct strategies for people, actually helps them with their bloody, like their client campaigns. Like I didn't make the connection at first. But like the way that we do direct response marketing for all these things just help their clients get better results. I'm like, well, this like the ripple effect of what we do just seems to go further and further and further. And then I realized that like most of the marketing agency dudes are like quite similar in the way that I think too, in the values and the way that we specifically like to like market and sell things anyway, because it's all online sales at the end of the day, right? And I really quite have grown a deep love for the agency space at the same time too, because one of the things that I identified quite early on was that, have you ever heard the analogy of like the barber who has a terrible haircut because he never spends time on his own hair or anything like that?
Like the cobbler with whose children have no shoes, right?
Correct, right? I really early on identified that the marketing space is fantastic at marketing their clients and terrible at marketing themselves. Mm-hmm. A lot of that comes down to like we've noticed a few different containers of things for people who are a little bit, not even earlier on, just people across the board in general. Having the belief in being able to construct your offer correctly in a way that you can actually detach the emotion from, because of the fear of it not being good enough, and actually constructing something that people actually will like happily hear you in buying, and sorry, not buying, but happily hear you out in. And I've found that there's a like, obviously data speaks, but like it helps to have an outside perspective to actually help construct that, because the human brain goes, but what if it's not good enough, right? So yeah, like we found that the actual the benefit that we had to the marketing agency space was just like, it just fit, right? Like it just made sense after a while. Since then, I think collectively we work with about 150 agencies, but we've got 70 active clients at the moment around the world. What we typically tend to do is we have we've got 2 offers essentially. One's our flagship program is Predictable Sales, which are designed to help people who are probably sitting at about 8 to 10K per month get to about 30K per month, focusing purely, really nothing else on anything other than growing the habits and sales processes to actually get them to like a 7-figure agency if they chose to get there. Some people choose not to get there.
So what are some of those habits? You talk a lot about predictable sales, right? How do you get there? Is it through habit building?
I would say that one of the biggest things is definitely habit building. I think that the habit of like the daily habit of focusing on growing your pipeline to some degree is something that most people don't focus on enough, right? A lot of it comes down to the foundations of their time management. I was having a chat with a non-client yesterday. So someone who was like coming in to ask for some help more than anything else, right? And his day, as he was talking about it, was like, I get up and I start working about 9 a.m. and I go and check some ad accounts, and then this happens and this happens and this happens. I'm like, everything you just said then was about fixing what isn't working right now, and you haven't spent any time on generating new business. And right. It's no wonder that what you're doing isn't creating new business then, right? Like if you're expecting new business to come and all your energy and effort and attention is being focused into like ad accounts that aren't like performing as well as they'd like to be, or ad accounts that are performing great, right? Like the habit that I see the best performers create is that anything that's done before 12 p.m. on a daily basis should be creating new business. Anything done after PM should be like either delivering great services for your clients or fixing the problems. Take your pick, right? But I found that the common traits of people that have a significantly like successful agency, depending on what stage you're at, if they're like under 30K or over 30K, right? Like it's developing the habits for yourself under 30K and then installing those habits into the people that you hire after 30K, right? So the first habit is probably like managing your time well enough to focus in on what's it going to take to grow our business first thing early on in the day, right? No matter what your lead generation source is, no matter what the way you build your pipeline is, we focus a lot on building like inbound opportunities. So I'm a big fan of like marketing organically. Like we help a lot of our clients create like Facebook communities and stuff because like there's nothing better to actually nurture people than like a Facebook community right now from what I've found. Purely based on the fact that like there is no shortage of skepticism towards a lot of agencies. And if you can nurture people in a place where they can feel like they're a part of a community, the resistance to sale significantly decreases like overnight. As an example, I've had a couple of clients who have like recently launched a Facebook group, and all these people who thought like you're just another marketer have like watched a 15-minute video that some of these guys have put up, just like educating, and they're like, wow, you're a real person. Like you aren't the asshole that I thought you were, right?
And is that what you teach them to do? Create the group and just give away knowledge, information, just feed the group continually with things like that?
In some cases, yeah. In some cases, right? We have like a fairly hybrid approach to the way that we do things. And what I mean when I say that is like if someone's personality type does not say that they want to have a personal brand in a Facebook group, then it's not going to be in our best interest to do that with them, purely based on the fact that they're not going to be living in a genius of any kinds, and they're going to hate their life, right? So it wouldn't make sense to do that with them. But for the person who is even like 60% plus into the idea of it, that's what we're going to sort of lead them towards, because like it's super powerful. It's crazy powerful. And we typically tend to spend a lot of our time focused into belief shifting more than educating, right? Because you can educate all day long, but people typically tend to fall into analysis paralysis if you give them too much information, and they get stuck and they don't know what to do. And if you're giving them like information yet again, you typically fall back into the category of just another marketer, I found, right? It's good to have a cadence of different things that you actually educate people on. But the more time you spend shifting beliefs in two different categories, shifting beliefs in the service that you deliver and shifting the beliefs in the fact that you aren't another marketer, you actually care about people. That's where you find that you get people on calls who are just like, dude, tell me exactly how we work with you and how can I pay you?
That's an interesting perspective. So, I mean, it's an interesting distinction to make, the difference between just throwing out information versus focusing on shifting someone's mindset towards a specific service or something like that. Because essentially what you're doing is getting the group to say, I agree with that. And if somebody is at that point, then they're receptive. Okay, I agree with that. Now what? And it's like, well, now you need...
Now you need the thing. Like they need the thing, right? Like, and I found that the reason why I said it that way, like we've done a lot of testing, like we track the performance of all content. We track the performance of all sales processes. We track the performance of everything, right? Like, to my core, I'm a systems and processes guy, and if people don't follow them, I cry. Right? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But the stuff that typically tends to move people the most is shifting their beliefs, right? Like, especially when we are in a skepticism-filled industry, right? Because like, there's no marketing agency owner that gets on a call with someone that doesn't have someone saying, I've already been burnt by a marketing agency before, right? So like, if you can help from the content level, like before someone even decides to get in a call with you in any way, shape, or form, if you can help show them that that's not the truth, and that there are people out there that actually have like ethic and like moral value to the way that they do things, and that not just through your like the way that you speak, but to the experiences of other clients and what even past clients who don't work with you anymore would say. It makes, forget resistance. It creates it creates relationships. Like, it creates real relationships with people. It creates real relationships with people who actually like deserve the time that you put into actually getting them a great result. And forget making it easier, it makes it meaningful.
I like what you said, and I can personally relate to that just by doing this podcast, right? Creating video after video. All the time, I'll meet somebody new in the community or whatever, and they're like, I feel like I know you just because I've seen so many of your videos, right? So I can see that translating into a Facebook group where someone joins the group, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll join this group. And like, you know, they see content, and then after a while, you feel like you know that person. And I would assume that psychologically that makes you more receptive to whatever the message is that they're trying to market or sell to you. But that makes a lot of sense. Now, do you find that it's hard to get people to join the group? Like, this is a question I always had. I think the idea of a Facebook group is great. Is it hard to get people to actually join it so that they can start seeing all the messaging?
Not really, actually. I think it really comes down to the way that you're actually like choosing to fill the group, right? Call it the strategy that we've used is like we just grew ours in a couple months to about 1,200 now, which is like, to be fair, I never expected to get over a couple hundred just because like I didn't have the focus on it. Then I realized the power of it. I'm like, well, I want to grow this thing to be as big as like it possibly can, purely based on the fact of like the impact and the belief shifting element. Like, even if people that work with us, like they start to see a better way of life, right? And then I've tested different things with different clients to see how quickly we can help like them get a result at the same time too. And to give you an answer, we've had clients who have started their groups within the past, like in June, that already have 200 to 300 people in their groups that are already actively a part of a community. It's insane how quickly these people have already become a part or like active people who want to contribute to it. It's insane. Like contractors, roofers, people who are like real estate agents, all these people who like the average marketer out there goes, oh, they're so skeptical. Dude, they're so not. They just want to be a part of something. Like, they actually just want to be a part of something that isn't like a skeptical community, if that makes sense, right? And honestly, like the most logical way that we've been able to help people do it is like get them to add people who are in that target market on Facebook as connection friends in the first place, and then hit the blue button and invite them to the group. And then it snowballs after that because that's we have like a couple of strategies that if I'm completely honest, I'm too scared.
So wait, let me just reiterate that. You connect personally as a friend, then you go into the group and you're able to invite that friend into the group.
Correct.
Gotcha.
You've got to think about it too, right? When you're marketing organically in the first place, like your limitation is the 5,000 friends on Facebook, right? But the group has no limitation in numbers. So like the purpose of it was like grow the community through the vehicle of your personal profile.
That makes sense.
And like, you know, you can Facebook's algorithm is fantastic in the respects where if you add, say, 50 real estate agents, the next 50 people will turn up, and your people you may know are real estate agents, and you can just hit 50 people a day. Takes 3 seconds, not 3, maybe 50 seconds, literally, right? And we found you can grow an audience, call it, within the space of probably 30 days from 0 to a couple hundred, and then in a couple months from a couple hundred to a couple thousand. And within the space of 6 months, you can go from having to take cold calls and cold emails from people who just don't want to speak to you into having a business that actually has people on a waiting list to work with you, which is fantastic. And the easiest way that we found to grow the group is exactly that, right? Add people, invite, add people, invite, add people, invite. The next best thing, and I've done it with this client, I'm way too scared to do this myself. It would break our acquisition system like nothing else, is doing referral competitions for the group itself as well. So we want to do right now, and I mean this when I say I'm too scared to do it, because the process that we actually use when someone joins a group is if you were to come to I'm living in a hotel right now because I'm traveling, but if you were to come to my hotel, the first thing I would ask is hey dude, do you want a coffee? Do you want a drink or something like that? It's the exact same with your Facebook group. You want to introduce yourself as someone comes into the group and then build a relationship with that person. We found that there's a percentage of about 15 to 20%, or even up to 30, on average, of people that join your group will book in for a meeting with you, right? And if I were to do the referral competition style that we want to do, it would get probably another 2,000 people in the group. And I don't think we could fit 600 calls in the calendar this month.
What does a referral competition look like?
Great question. So super simple, right? The structure that I was going to use for it is probably give away 6 months worth of our service, and then create a leaderboard type competition as to who invites the most people to the group.
And does Facebook give you an easy way to track that, or how do you manage
No, we would manually track that.
Gotcha.
We would manually track that, and that's not that. That's a responsibility more so than something that we would let go away, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Well, I like this. So, all right, we talked about creating a group, strategies to get people into the group, content that you're going to seed into the group that's going to lower people's guard, build relationships, make them more receptive, hopefully potentially start agreeing with you, right? You're shifting mindsets.
Yeah.
And now you're booking calls with people, right? And so talk to me about this objectionless close that you've got going on. What does that mean?
So to my point earlier about skepticism in marketing agencies, the reason why most people will say they had a bad relationship with a marketing agency, apart from someone who just wasn't good at what they did, that you have to consider that. The thing that you have to take into account is that majority of bad relationships in business, in life, with your partner, right, come down to misaligned expectations, if you really think about it, right? Sure. Someone said, jump. You asked how high, they never told you. You jumped as high as you could. And then they were pissed off at how high you jumped. And then you said, what the hell? You said, jump how high. Misaligned expectations will destroy relationships quicker than most things. And we typically tend to ask people to run their sales process off of a 2-call process. Call number 1 is designed purely, it's barely even spoken about as to the results. It's more like a character conversation, build that relationship a little bit more and align expectations. Spend more time asking, have you worked with a marketing agency in the past? If you have, can you please tell me about that experience? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Do you feel like they did a good job with you? Do you feel like they didn't do a good job with you? What was the relationship like? What parts did you like about it? What parts didn't you like about it? Give me as much insight as you can. What I've found that does is it changes the conversation from I'm here to be sold into this person actually gives a shit. And it turns the whole conversation from I'm like a business conversation, which it is at the end of the day, right? But like I honestly would tell someone, I do, and I do this myself too, is like, dude, I'm all for trying to help you get a result, but can we just actually like get to know each other a little better, find out a little bit more about like where you've been let down in the past? Like I care more about that, because if we think about it logically, if we're looking here to work together, and like I always say to future pace too, right? If we're looking to work together for the next couple of years, it's probably best that we air out the dirty laundry now, right? Because if we don't do that, guess what? We're going to get a couple months in, and it's going to be like a really, 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 really hard conversation we need to have that may not need to happen if we don't, like, if we get this part right. Mm-hmm. And I found that if you spend more time, like spend a little bit more time on your discovery calls, spend like, you know, where the industry standards say like spend no more than 10, 15 minutes, just see if they're a good fit and then move on. The way that we typically tend to like ask people to run their sales process is, if you're hopping on a call with them, if you're following the process we're asking you to follow organically on Facebook through the group, they're probably already qualified because of the questions you've asked them, right? So if they're even 50% qualified, they're going to be more qualified than you ever got with a Facebook lead anyway. That's typically the way that we found it. And we found people are like closing between 70 to 80% of these people into clients, which makes complete sense then. Like, yes, they are higher qualified people. And once you get them on that call, it's like, cool, we already know that we can sort of help you, right? Like we've already identified you have a problem that we can solve at this point. Like it's very clear that that's the situation that we're in.
Right. You've already shifted their belief. They've already agreed with you. You guys are on the same page.
Absolutely.
But I think it's a good point. And I can think back to conversations like that have unearthed small little things that really cemented the relationship, right? So maybe it's like you're talking and you're like, you know, what I really didn't like that annoyed me the most was this thing, right? Like 100%. They always wanted to talk to me at 9:30 in the morning, and I'm like getting my kids ready. Like I would prefer to be able to meet with my agency at 6 p.m. after and it's like, oh, okay. And now you have a decision to make. It's like, all right, if we can agree, hey team, if we can agree that we're going to do our reviews with this specific client at 6 p.m., they're going to be thrilled. Right. Yeah. Or maybe you say, no, we can't do that. And now we know this is a bad, like, let's say no up front, because we know that it's never going to be great because we know what she really wants and we're not willing to do that, you know?
Or option 3 is like, look, we can't do 6, but we can do 3. Like, would that suit you? Right. Like, would that fit your world better? But yeah, like that, you have, you've cottoned on to what I'm trying to get across to you pretty quickly there, right? And it's as simple as that. Like, the person who feels heard and appreciated that early on is the person that's going to want to actually probably do the work that you need, that you require of them as well, right? Because like the other side of it too is like the age-old story of, dude, the leads are shit. Are they? Are they? Yeah. Or do you just not have a sales process for your business, right? And that's a conversation you need to have on that call, right? Like, where did you get let down? Oh, the leads were shit. Can you tell me a little bit about that, right? Like, tell me a little bit about like what made them shit.
So which is fantastic, especially if you're a high-level agency, because I love to tell that story, right? Like, hey, how many people send spreadsheets full of leads and then end up in this conversation of like, I just made a meme the other day where it's like that lady yelling at the cat and she's like, your leads stink. And the cat's like, learn to close. and now you're like fighting with your brand new client, right? Like nobody wants that. And HighLevel, we take a lot of the work off of their plate and sort of automate a lot of it. But you're right. It is important to find out, are you willing to commit to a certain level of this, right? Like, hey, are you willing to commit to phone call reviews? Every month, we want to listen to 20 of the calls that we generated for you with you. Yep. Are you willing to commit to that? You know what I mean? And that can change a lot, because if you got the commitment and then they're not doing it, it's like, hey, remember when we had that conversation and you said that you were going to make time for this and you haven't been, that can save a relationship, because then they're like, I know it is my fault. You're right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I find like a really good trick with that is finding out their why, right? And reminding them of that frequently. So like when someone joins our program, one of the first things I get them to do when they start working with us is I get them to like write a story of the why, right? And I get them to like send a photo of what the why means. And it's typically like family, kids, all that sort of stuff, that wife and kids. And whenever like something isn't in alignment with what they were saying that they were doing, I'll just send them that. Oh, fuck. Okay, I'm gonna do the work correctly now, right? But it aligns expectations really quickly, right? But the quicker you can get on the same page, which is really all it is, right? Getting on the same page.
Yeah.
But really getting on the same page, right? Because like it's too easy to say, we can get you results. Yeah, you can probably get results, but is it a right fit, right? Like, or is it a right fit in the way that you are as a person with them, right? Like, are you going to hate working with this person? A lot of it's about character too, right? Like, do you clash as people? If so, it might not be a great relationship. And it might affect your business, their business. It might affect your team culture. Like, it's not going to be a fun situation for anyone involved at that point. And I have asked many people to let go of that client because it is destroying the rest of your business. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. Like, it's killing your whole team's morale. Like, get rid of that dude. And like, sometimes you have to have that conversation with people too, right? But like, so anyway, to your question, how do you create the objectionless close? Don't try and close. Try and align. Align more than you try and close. If it aligns, guess what? They ask how we can work together, not the other way around. But the other, like, the questions you do want to ask are like, have you worked with an agency before? What was the experience like? Tell me a little bit more. And what else? And what else? And what else? Like, get as much out as you can so they feel heard, right? And live in curiosity too, right? What if they say like, it was terrible? Like, can you tell a little bit more about that, right? Like, really, like, live in curiosity and like, and mean it when you say it too. It's not a part of the process. You're actually caring at this point, right? Like, to your point before, like, I want to know what the bad situation was because that way we know whether we can deliver on the service or not, right? The other thing, especially on a discovery call, is like, do you have a business partner? If so, should they be here for the next call? Because
very important.
Yeah, it's a super common one that people will get like blindsided with quite a fair bit, right? Like, if they don't have the ability to like, it's not even decision making, right? Like, it's a really common thing, like decision making process for them in the first place too. But you need to like make sure that all parties are there for that like conversation, and then it happens a lot. One business partner's there for the discovery call, then they're both there for this, like the strategy call, if you want to call it that, right? Or the demo call, whatever. It's called different things across different agencies. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure that you have, sort of coached the first person who was there on how to explain what the second person needs to understand in order for that to happen, for them to come to that call and there to be something. If that is the case, I would recommend doing a Loom video of something or something for them to provide to the second person with the earlier commitment to say, make sure they watch before they get on the call, so we can all be on the same page to some degree, right? Yeah. Again, all we're doing at that point is aligning expectations, shifting beliefs, because there is nothing worse. And I have to say that, like, I can get super frustrated when that happens. Because you get someone there who's just like super skeptical. They're still in that because like one person's in the Facebook group, if you call it, and one person isn't, right?
Okay,
like
I got you.
One person's had their belief shift and one hasn't.
Right.
I've had a couple of situations where I've been on calls and like, dude's like, who are you? I'm like, I just don't get on calls because I don't know who I am anymore. I'm sorry. Like, I really don't. and this is the reason why, right? Because like, it's too hard. You're fighting an uphill battle. Like, screw sales, if that makes sense, right? Because like the idea of like sales is like, make them believe. No. Like, let them go and let them go be a part of your community, because then they're gonna believe, right? Like that's totally fine.
Well, I like what you're saying here, and I mean, it resonates because for me, I always like to bring industry standards into those kind of conversations, right? So you're asking all the pain points, and what I think you'll typically find is, well, let's talk about that one thing. You're saying that the leads cost too much, right? Mm-hmm. And you said that you were paying on average, whatever, $75 per lead. The industry standard for your industry is actually about $75. So that's not out of the norm. I think the problem might be that you weren't closing enough of them. So let's talk about that. And so we, work with our clients typically close at this rate, but it requires X, Y, and Z. Is X, Y, and Z something that you guys are willing to commit to? And this sounds like what you're talking about, right? Like getting these commitments, aligning them. And then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, well, we talked about like what the lead should typically cost, what your closing rate should typically be, what it's going to require of you. That sounds good to you guys. And if you're aligned, then you're right. They kind of say, so what's the next step? And you're like, yeah, the next step is your credit card. Let's get you signed up, right?
Visa or MasterCard, right? To go a little bit deeper on what you just sort of said there too, though, right? Like, I think the terminology you used was like, are you willing to commit to that? Early on, the first question you actually asked, the second question you asked, the first question was like, tell me a bit of the backstory. The second question was like, what habits? You want to find out if they habitually already do manage their sales process correctly or not. If they have the habits installed of doing that right now too, because if they don't already have those installed into their process, you can ask for commitment, but you need to paint the picture of what commitment looks like to them if they have never done it before.
Yeah.
Because it's all too easy to say like, yeah, man, we'll commit to that. And then like, fuck, I didn't expect this, right? Yeah. Like, you need to paint the picture of what commitment looks like if they don't have that. And that's why you've got to like, qualify like, what, dude, like, what are your habits in this situation, right?
Well, that's why I love my point about the industry standards is I feel like, and I think you're saying the same thing, most businesses have no knowledge of anything outside of their own business when it comes to like industry best practices, right? So I feel like an agency is in a great position to open their eyes to certain things where it's like, hey, you guys don't know that you should be doing these things just because you don't do them. But let me explain to you or show you what works. And it's often, like you said, wow, that's, I've heard that reaction before. Wow, really? Like my competitors are doing that like every day or every week or whatever. And it's like, yeah, they are. And now you're having an honest conversation, like you said, right? It's like, do you feel like you can honestly commit to that?
Yeah.
As opposed to, what I mean? Yeah.
The follow-up questions you want to ask with that are like, cool, what would trip you up that would stop you doing it? Like, understand, like, is there something habitually that in their past, like, the question I typically tend to ask is like, knowing you better than I know you right now, right? Like, what is that would stop you from achieving what we're asking you to do right now? Because they'll rattle it out, right? Like, they know themselves better than you know them, right? Like, oh, we're terrible time management. Cool. Can we commit to working on that then, right? Like, there's things you want to understand with that as well.
Well, I love this, especially again, going back to what HighLevel does, because it's like, I was just on a call. We were looking at an agency's account and we were going through conversations and we were looking at one that closed, but it closed on, I think, like the 7th or 10th outreach, right? So the lead went into a HighLevel automation after like 10 texts or emails or whatever it was. They came back and they said, oh, you know what? Sorry, I've been super busy, but yeah, let's book a call or whatever. And so to what you're saying, I can imagine, hey, it often, it typically takes 7 to 10 to 15 touch points to get somebody to close. Like, can you guys commit to that? Realistically, probably not. Like my front desk person's not going to call somebody 10 times. And it's like, you know what? They don't even need to, because our system will address this for you. But it's important that we all understand what it takes to close a lead, right? So I think that's beautiful. I think it's a great marriage of what you're saying, getting on the same page with leveraging that with what you can provide that can actually make some of that easier,
Absolutely. And I think that actually, a lot of our clients do use HighLevel, right? And hypothetically, if they don't come from, it's probably most of our clients do. But if they don't come, like if the lead source doesn't come from a Facebook group or whatever it is, part of that nurturing is come join our Facebook group, right? Like, it makes so much logical sense to make it a part of the nurturing process, because you don't find a better place to nurture people, like quite literally.
That's actually pretty cool. It's almost like if they're not in your group or whatever, and you're having a sales conversation and they're not ready to buy, it's like, cool, you know what? You should just join our Facebook group. You can follow along, you know what I mean? Sort of get a better feel for us. We share results in there.
That was actually the first purpose of us creating one in like when we first did it. It was like, like I'm like a sales pipeline guru because I've been doing this for so long, right? Like I used to manage 100 people at once, which is exactly what I'm doing now too, funnily enough, which is great. But the easier you can make nurture, the easier you can make nurture, the better, right? Which is great for what HighLevel does. But if you can make nurture, if you can make the nurturing element, make it feel like they want to be there as a part of a community, it's a different ballgame. It's so different because then they feel like they belong somewhere, as opposed to just getting the next text or email.
Makes a lot of sense.
And I like it, it's just fun.
I mean, I think I don't know if I'm thinking it's harder or if it's just something that I've never tried to do, but I think the end result is undeniably a better place than typical sales, right? Like when we booked this call and we were going through notes and stuff, I thought we were going to be talking about completely different things. You know what I mean? Like old school sales tactics of like how to close somebody.
Hey, man.
Not this, which I love so much more, which is, hey, actually create like an environment that people want to be in, let them convince themselves. And then at that point, it's not selling. It's just sort of having a conversation and deciding that you're going to go on a journey together, right?
That's what I try to impart with all people too, right? And like they'll come and say, yeah, we just want to close more clients. I'm like, cool. Can we look at how you're getting these people first? Like, can we look at that? And like, if you've got a bunch of these like old and dead leads that you have considered old and dead, where are they now? Like, what are you doing with them? Get them into something where you can nurture these people so they can actually like.
That's actually a really interesting database reactivation idea. Take all your old leads and say, hey, we actually just created a Facebook community. It's free if you guys want to join.
Yeah, we that's like step one for us. Yeah, like literally, right? Like that's like step one.
That makes sense. What about running like you can run Facebook ads where the call to action is to join a group, right? Do you guys ever do that?
It has to go to a landing page, and then the landing page. It has to go to a landing page with a lead magnet, and then the lead magnet. The smartest way to do it is to deliver the lead magnet in the group. So, like, they must go to the group to collect the lead magnet, type thing.
And is that something you can automate? Can you say when someone joins our group, like they should get this downloadable or something?
So there's a couple ways you can automate it. Like you can either have it in like a guide in the group, or hypothetically, if you have like an appointment setter or like someone on your team that's in the group, like you can see when new people join and then you just deliver the thing to them when they come in.
Well, I also wonder if you could, to nerd out on this for a second, send them to a HighLevel page with a HighLevel form, right? They fill out the form.
Yeah.
You send them the instructions to join the group. And I wonder if with Zapier, Facebook tells you when you get a new group member, because then you could just automate the whole thing through HighLevel, right? Like Zapier tells HighLevel they join your group, and now you just send them the thing or whatever.
Possibly.
Interesting. I have to look into that.
You would probably know better than I'm not a tech dude. Like I'm a human communication dude. That's it, right? Like that's where like I'm a human communication and system and process dude. Like that's literally it.
Well, you've got my wheels spinning. I like it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Look, don't get me wrong. Like, we can help people with more, call it conflictual based situations where it's like more hardcore stuff. I just fucking hate it, right? Like, I came from that world, and like,
no one likes it. Like, no one likes to be the person getting sold, and the person doing the selling doesn't even like it.
And like, so many people come like, "Oh, I suck at objection handling." Like, yeah, because you suck at managing expectations. Right, like let's get you better at that earlier on in the process. And dude, like one of the things that most people like, the question that most people will probably asking right now is like, cool, this Facebook group thing sounds fantastic, Chris, but what do I put in there? Right?
Yeah.
Start recording your sales calls. Start taking more notes on your sales calls. Start noticing where people say, "Oh, that's amazing," and start creating content around this stuff. People say, "Oh, that's amazing," right? Like there is a belief that's been shifted there. And if you create content, like 100, like I did an advanced content creation masterclass for our clients of the day, and like honest to God, I said the easiest way to create content is like at the end of your day, go write down 5 to 10 things that happened that day inside or outside the business, and then tell a story about what happened. Like, that's literally it, right? Like, if you had a bad experience with the client, talk about it. If you had a great experience with the client, talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Put some character in there too. Like, be authentically yourself. The more authentically yourself you are, the more people will connect with you and have affinity with you at the same time too, right? If you are pissed off, be pissed off. If you are happy, be happy, right? Like, let people know what you stand for and what you don't stand for. And these, like, I think my favorite ones are like when people have like shitty sales calls, like, man, that was the worst call ever. Like, let me tell you what happened. Do you know what I mean?
Let me ask you, can I ask you a tough question? Curveball.
Sure.
I feel like one of my fears with this strategy would be, well, what if people in my group start saying, preaching, pushing things that are a competitor to me in some way, a conflicting belief in some way, something like that. You know what I mean?
What would you do if that happened in your house?
That's a good question. If it were a family member, I would handle it one way. If it were an annoying guest, I mean, you can always kick them out.
So I have a friend, and this happened to he did it. It was a masterclass in the way that he handled it. Actually, it didn't even handle it. What happened was, he had someone who he didn't reply to in 12 minutes via direct message, who screenshot the message and blasted him for it, publicly in the group, saying this guy sucks. Like, he's obviously managing more than one conversation at once. Who the hell does he think he is? And I'm just like, what the fuck? And immediately, like, he didn't say anything at first, but his clients started chiming in saying, dude, what the hell are you talking about? And then it starts building a wall of social push, right?
Yeah.
But like,
It happens all the time in our group every day.
testimonial after testimonial after testimonial after testimonial. So, like, I invite it. Like, come talk shit in my group, please. Like, there'll be people that will back us up, like, day by day. But trying to sell competitive services and all that stuff too, right? Like it's your house, man. It's your choice as to how you handle that. Lay the smack down if you want. I think airing, like, at that stage, it makes sense to publicly air it out, so other people see how you react to situations like that. I've had many people who come into the group and, like, I'm all well and good if people want to come and, like, add value to what's happening. Like, we all know what's happening. They're adding value so they can try and get more people. Like, that's cool, right? I get it. Actually add value though. If you come in and ask those freaking questions, like, I will publicly shame you, right? Like, I'm telling you, because, like, you've just posted the same question in 84 groups. I will publicly shame you. I promise you. I think there's a question the other day was like, what's your biggest problem with, like, or what's the biggest thing you've had to overcome in your agency so far? I was like, posts like this. I think that was my reply. Posts like this. And like 80 people commented just saying, oh my God, that was hilarious. But it's like, you're setting the tone, right? Like, this isn't the place for that. This is, like, truly here, a place to help people. If you're here to help and add to that, fantastic. If you're here to
and do you guys help your clients deal with those scenarios? Like,
yeah.
Is that part of your program of, like, hey,
absolutely. Like, so our program's a little bit different to most. Like, I have visibility across everything. We help them manage their pipeline. Like, one of our support coaches, Jake, he like checks over people's pipelines twice per week, checks over people's content twice per week, just to make sure we know exactly where they're at, so we can see, like, what their probability of success for that month is. Like, we need to see, like, we don't, the old coaching model. Here's some content, enjoy. If you get a result, fantastic. If you don't get a result, we got your money. I've spent so much money on coaching that sucked, that we built an engine and a back end process that has shown in Q1 we had a 73% success rate in our clients. When the industry standard, you're talking about industry standards. Industry standard is 20, right? So, like, I'm quite happy with that. But we have, like, a really hybrid model too, right? Like, we have a Slack channel running with every client to like hear their fears and problems that they're experiencing on a daily basis, or hear the challenges they're experiencing. We obviously have like our own private group Facebook community for our clients, but we also have like weekly, we have weekly check-in forms that we ask them to like give to us to work out like what has happened this week. Let us look over your pipeline so we can actually understand what part of the process is broken at the moment, right? Like, and do you have one of the biggest things we typically tend to battle is like, do you have enough data to be making a decision right now? Or are you just talking through emotion, right? Like, is it emotion talking, or are you looking at numbers right now? Because if you're not looking at numbers, go put the work in and so we can look at more numbers. It's pretty much just that, right? But the difference that we typically tend to, or the responsibility we take, right? Like we aren't responsible for our clients, but we're responsible to our clients, right? And we have so much visibility that like if someone doesn't succeed, there's a fundamental problem that could have been fixed earlier on in the process with aligning expectations better. I'm telling you this right now. We would have had a higher success rate in Q1 if we had a better aligning expectations process. Because the people who didn't succeed probably shouldn't have been brought into the program in the first place. And I'm the first to say that, right? Like more than first to say. And it's the same.
Important. It's a hard skill to generate. It's a hard ability to get to, right, where you're willing to turn down money, where you're willing to at that point in your brain when you're like, this is a red flag. To be like, you know what? Maybe you should hang out in our free Facebook group for a while because like we don't do it that way.
That's exactly what we do, right? And look, I understand that there's a couple different buckets of sanity that you'll sit in some places too, because sometimes you got to pay bills. Sometimes like, can we get you a result? Yeah, we can. Let's just do it. Like we know this is going to be a little bit tougher. But like some agencies out there, they might have to make like a certain amount of money to hit target for that month, so everyone gets paid, right? Like sometimes that might have to happen. And I'm sorry, like that like it's not ideal, but like that's a reality that most people will probably accept too frequently is the problem, right?
Yeah. But again, I feel like you can work it out if you're honest, right? It's like, hey, you know, we talked about how the industry standard for a lead is $75. You really needed to be lower than 50. You know, we can, it might happen, but you know, I'll be straight up with you. We're typically around 75, which is the industry standard. If you want to give it a go, like, let's do it. But at least you vocalized, you know, if you're willing to take a little bit of a risk, so are we.
Yeah.
But let's not end up in this situation where you're like, you know, you promised me $50 leads, and it was I actually didn't.
And that call was recorded. Do you want me to go back to it?
Right. Yeah.
The other thing you can probably do there too is like one thing I've been told that I'm like, and I kind of have to do this as a consultant, but like the ability to zoom out is significantly powerful. And if you can help your clients zoom out, right? Like, and what I mean when I say zoom out is just looking at things from a bird's eye view, looking at the whole situation from a bird's eye view, right? And what that is understanding what their customer lifetime value is, right? If they're like, if they can't answer that question, then you have an opportunity there, right? Like you have an opportunity to like help uncover the services they aren't selling that could increase the lifetime value that turns $75 into, man, I'd pay $750 for this.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's probably something I don't think enough people will take into account too, right? Like, but this is really like, it's for the advanced agency owner who understands the purpose of asking a question like that, right? Like for someone who's like, you know, just hit six figures at like 10K, which is fantastic. Like you might not be sitting there thinking like, what's your customer lifetime value? So we can actually like assess and show you like $75 really bugger all. If you just do this, if you just start selling more things to these people, then like, dude, $75 is a blessing, right? And if you were talking like hundreds of thousands of leads that you were getting them, yeah, $20 difference might make a difference, right? But when you're talking like the 5 to 10 they need a week, man, like it's like a 10K difference a year for what the millions of dollars extra you can make.
Totally. That's a great point.
It's totally not.
Well, Chris, if people are listening to this and it's resonating, where do they head to connect with you, to learn more or move forward?
Our, we have this thing. It's a Facebook group. You should come. You should totally come and check it out.
Shocker! Imagine that.
Who would have thought? We just recently changed the name. I think it's Predictable Sales Process and Client Signing Strategies for Social Media Marketing Agencies. Why
don't you Slack it to me?
Yeah,
and I'll make sure we get the link below the video.
The group handle is just Facebook/groups/predictable sales.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, super simple, right? You can add me personally on Facebook if you'd like to. It's just Chris Morrison. There's a photo of me and a sausage dog. His name is Donut. He's an absolute legend.
Nice.
And yeah, they're probably the best ways to connect. And honestly, go check some of the stuff out in there. We have interviews, like a bunch of belief shifting interviews to show you that there are coaching companies out there that give a shit. It's
awesome. Well, Chris, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, dude.
Thanks everybody for watching. We will see you in the next one.